Welcome back to day 2 out of 5 on our series on CPTSD. Today we're here to really break down what CPTSD is and its list of common impacts. As we try to understand complex trauma, we also have to talk a little bit about chronic stress, since they share so many similar impacts and often overlap. Chronic stress is what we'll explore in the next part of this series, and it is oftentimes even harder to pin down and even explain than CPTSD is. And the line between CPTSD and chronic stress is a blurry one. But generally, CPTSD involves prolonged experiences of more direct threat or harm, such as abuse, violence, active discrimination, lack of safety. Chronic stress, on the other hand, often stems more from chronic neglect or deprivation of some of our core needs, including having our physical and emotional needs unmet for long periods of time. So it's oftentimes less overt harm and tends to be more covert, which is why it's hard to pin down. Many people might experience chronic stress if they dealt with a lot of income insecurity, even if they didn't qualify as living in poverty. We also see this with somebody who dealt with ongoing health issues, either for themselves or for someone within their family. We see this for systemic marginalization. Chronic stress can also come from chronically unmet emotional needs. One of the most common examples is growing up in a safe home with very well-meaning parents who were just not able to hold space for us to feel and express our own emotions. Another really common example we might see is growing up neurodivergent in a family or community where there was just not adequate support and understanding of our differences. Chronic stress is super widespread globally, and CPTSD is less common. That being said, I have a strong feeling that CPTSD is very underrepresented in our current statistics due to things like still not being considered an official diagnosis in the DSM-5, which drives me crazy. There's a lack of psychoeducation because of that, and just a lot of underreporting, undercounting. That being said, with the research we have currently, the current estimate is that around 2 to 8% of the general population experience CPTSD symptoms, and about half of the people in mental health treatment facilities. CPTSD is going to come with many of the same symptoms we see in PTSD. We're talking flashbacks, nightmares, hypervigilance, and avoidance of reminders of the trauma, but it has additional, more complex impacts. Chronic trauma, especially experienced in childhood, affects and changes our brain structure. It dysregulates our nervous and endocrine systems, raising the level of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. It weakens our immune system, and it deeply alters how we think, feel, and behave on a daily basis. Looking at some of the long-term effects of CPTSD, some of the most common psychological effects include a hard time regulating our emotions, difficulties with trust and intimacy in relationships, higher rates of depression, emotional numbing and dissociation, memory issues, and a distorted sense of self. We see higher rates of personality disorders with people who have experienced complex trauma, in large part due to that distorted sense of self, and also persistent feelings of shame and worthlessness. Childhood trauma in particular can actually alter our gene expression via epigenetic changes, causing long-term effects on our health and development and potentially impacting future generations to come. Some of the physical conditions that are commonly linked to CPTSD include somatization. We see this a lot in people and cultures where there isn't much expression of our emotions, and our emotional distress may then show up as physical symptoms in our body even when there is no detectable medical cause for these symptoms. CPTSD also comes with sleep issues and insomnia. It can cause disordered eating. We see higher rates of GI disorders like IBS, metabolic conditions like diabetes, cardiovascular issues, heart disease, hypertension. We see higher rates of neurological disorders. Migraines are a big one. Musculoskeletal issues and chronic pain. Respiratory issues like asthma. Dermatological issues like eczema, autoimmune disorders, urological problems, and survivors are at a higher risk for substance abuse and other high-risk behaviors that can negatively impact our health. These symptoms, if not treated, persist throughout our lifetime. And in older adults who've experienced CPTSD, we see much higher rates of self-isolation, withdrawal, reluctance to leave our home, worsening of chronic illnesses, and increased feelings of confusion, depression, and fear. So maybe we can all just take a breath having heard that. I know when I first started to hear this long list of issues associated with CPTSD, I felt all kinds of feelings about it. It can be very overwhelming because CPTSD can impact nearly all areas of our physical and mental health. So to avoid getting lost in a long list of complications, this series is going to focus in on 3 major areas of impact that really affect our daily life. In the next video in the series, which comes tomorrow, we'll explore the effects of living with a chronically activated or hyper-aroused nervous system. Day 2, we're going to look at challenges with trust and intimacy in relationships. And then the last video in this series will close with looking at how CPTSD distorts our sense of self. So make sure to tune back in for the next videos in this series, and I'll see you back here tomorrow.